taken this morning by the city of Stockton. The person who will be addressing you this morning is our Fire Marshal, Richard Edwards, and but he's joined also by our Chief Rudat, who is our fire chief, and one of his colleagues, Mr. Johnson over here, and I can't remember what your current title is. Division Chief, I'm sorry. And then also Peter Lemos, who is with our Neighborhood Services Division, which is within the police department. They do code enforcement for the city. So we're going to actually state the information that we'll be sharing today. Fire Marshal Edwards will share with you, and then all of his other colleagues here are here to help address questions if you have any. Okay, great, thank you.
Good morning, Richard Edwards, the Fire Marshal for the City of Stockton. The City of Stockton acted this morning to close 6 pallet yards that pose a significant threat to public safety due to the volume of wooden pallets and how those pallets are stored. All 6 businesses were posted with cease and desist notices between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock this morning and will not be allowed to continue operations until all fire, building, and municipal code violations have been addressed. Pallet yards pose a significant threat to public safety due to the sheer volume of wooden pallets and how those pallets are stored. Several large destructive pallet yard fires have jeopardized the safety of our residents, businesses, and our first responders. Additionally, they tax our resources, reducing our effectiveness to provide emergency services to the rest of the city when we're fighting these large fires. There are currently 15 pallet yards within the City of Stockton's service area. And since January of 2019, we've assigned a special inspector in the Fire Prevention Bureau to specifically address pallet yards. They've partnered with our partners in code enforcement to make sure that we are collaborating on those enforcement and education of the municipal code, the fire code, etc. For consistency, that partnership also helps to maintain that consistency with the inspections. The goal is initially to educate our businesses to what those codes are, how to interpret those codes, and how to apply them correctly. Beginning in June of this year, we also gave each pallet operator a formal letter stating what the requirements were for their operations. In that letter, they were given specific instructions that they had to provide documentation back to the fire department within 30 days to maintain their compliance with the fire code. That compliance specifically addressed items such as water for hydrants, for fire suppression capabilities. All pallet yards are required to store their pallets within 150 feet of a fire hydrant here within the City of Stockton. Additionally, all those pallets need to be stored within 150 feet of an access road. That's an improved all-weather surface, so either concrete or asphalt, so that we can actually get our fire apparatus to those pallets when they're burning. So, after that 30 days, most of these businesses that were listed were unresponsive to our request to comply with the fire code and the Stockton Municipal Code. So as such, today, those 6 businesses that were not compliant were issued cease and desist notices requiring them to stop all operations. So they're not allowed to intake any more pallets, they're not allowed to build, they're not allowed to repair new pallets. Additionally, the only operation they are allowed to do is actually remove the pallets that are there to reduce that risk to their neighboring businesses in the surrounding areas to become compliant with the fire code. So the 6 businesses that were closed this morning were AA Universal Pallets at 1621 Navy Drive, California Pallets at 235 West Scotts Avenue, Central Pallets at 1881 East Market, G Pallets at 1717 Sanguinetti Lane, New Star Pallets at 2150 East Fremont Street, and Pallet Guy at 1030 North Union Street. So I'll now open it up to any questions.
So is this, this is after the fires that we had a couple months ago, and those businesses have been there for years and years and years before nobody
Pallet businesses are a very unique operation. Their commodity, the pallets turn over almost daily. So the City of Stockton and the Fire Prevention Bureau, we issue an operational permit, and that permit is basically the opportunity to go out and inspect these pallet facilities once a year. But as you can imagine, inspecting them only once a year, what we see today is going to be significantly different tomorrow. And so to address that, we've had an inspector now go out there almost every other week to these facilities to maintain what that compliance looks like. We've also gone through all the fire code, all the municipal code to make sure those codes are being applied equitably and appropriately to each of these facilities. And that's where the determination was made that they needed to provide site plans to provide us that information, where they're storing their product consistently to maintain that compliance with the fire code and the municipal code. And what we found was that because of that turnover of pallets, while sometimes they would be compliant, we would go out days later and they wouldn't be, just because of the sheer volume of pallets that are there. So that's why we're taking this enforcement action today.
How long did it take to just put this whole operation in place? I mean, I know you gave them a 30-day notice. What about before that? Is there like a whole legal process you have to go through?
So this process actually started back in January when we assigned a dedicated fire inspector with a code enforcement officer to regularly inspect each of these facilities. Part of that initial enforcement activity was in education. We wanted to make sure everybody was educated about the code requirements for these businesses and give them ample time to make the necessary adjustments. We followed that up with a letter in early June to go back and memorialize exactly what we had spoken about. And we found, now we're almost 60 days since the date of that letter, and the businesses that were listed were unresponsive to our request, and that's why we took the actions today.
Did you encounter any resistance at any of them today?
I can't speak to that.
What are the most significant violations that you found with these pallet laws?
The most significant violations that were constant to these 6 businesses were that they lacked an approved hydrant system or water system within 150 feet of where they're storing their pallets, and an improved fire department access road. So they're required to also have an access road within 150 feet of any location they're storing their pallets, so we can actually get to that fire when it should occur, so we can keep it small before it grows into a major conflagration.
And have you determined some of the causes of the other fires, the pallet fires that have occurred in the last few years?
The latest fire is still under investigation. We're waiting for more information to become available and research. The first 2 fires, the fire that occurred earlier this year and the one that occurred about 18 months ago, those were both found to be started at the origin near a saw during the manufacturing process or repairing of pallets.
Is there an estimated cost that all these pallet fires were kind of put to the city?
I do not have an estimated cost.
Richard, what are the locations of those 2 you just mentioned earlier this year?
I do not have the specific locations of that. The fires that occurred this year were at 1881 East Market and 235 West Scotts.
And are those on the list again? I'm trying to recall what you just
Those
said.
locations are on the list.
Of the 6.
Correct.
So until they follow code and fix those violations, so to speak, they are shut down.
Correct. So the cease and desist notice that went out today told them specifically that they can no longer take in any new pallets. They're not allowed to repair. They're not allowed to build new pallets. The only operation they can do is actually physically remove the pallets on site off of those locations to become compliant and reduce the risk to the surrounding community. Inspectors will be out next week to confirm that actually has occurred. We're also working with them to schedule compliance meetings. So we're going to bring them in to the Fire Prevention Bureau and meet with our building officials, code enforcement officials, economic development folks, so that we can help them get back on their feet in improved areas that meet the fire code requirements.
The 3 fires that we had in the past 2 years, basically, were the first one in a long time, or we can say maybe we have one of those fires a year?
So we've had 2 fires in the last 6 months. Prior to that, we had an additional large pallet fire about 18 months prior to that.
And before that?
And before that, I can't speak to that. I don't have that information.
are pallet fires so hard to fight and such a danger?
So pallet fires pose a significant danger to the community just because of the commodity they are. So as pallets are stacked, they have a lot of airflow between each individual pallet, so that air helps contribute to large fire growth, and the sheer surface volume of the wood contributes to that fire growth also. These pallet yards are very large, so they have a tremendous amount of fuel load, so they require a lot of water to actually suppress and overcome the BTUs or British thermal units, the heat that's generated from these fires. So that's the necessity and the requirement that's put in there for the water supply systems.
Were these near residential areas as well? Because I know a couple of years ago when there was a major pallet fire, a number of homes were destroyed.
Sure. So pallet yards are typically located in certain areas that are approved by land use through the planning department, but they do sometimes abut residential neighborhoods or may be in close proximity, further increasing the risk to public safety.
How about these? The ones you went to today, were any of them near residential areas?
Some of these were.
Are there any locations that will not be able to meet the requirements that you guys are putting forth that are going to have to be permanently shut down?
No. So each of these locations that we visited today, they have the opportunity to bring in private water supply systems to put in the hydrants that are necessary for their storage. They also have the ability to provide that improved all-weather surface, so the fire access for the fire apparatus.
So did the other 9 within your service area, they all checked out, right?
So the other 9 are currently compliant with the fire code and the municipal code.
And how many times were they in violation for you to have to put them on this notice? I mean, was it you guys went out one time and that was it, you're done, or is it did they have multiple violations throughout the inspections?
Right. I can't speak to a specific number. I don't have that information. But we did visit these facilities at least monthly, if not more frequently. And a lot of that at the beginning was surely just to educate them, making sure they were aware of the code, how that code applies to each of their businesses, giving them the opportunity to become compliant.
So you could say they had plenty of opportunity to fix it before you guys came to shut it down.
Yes.
Well, since January, you said you've gone out there, and then June again, and then leading to today.
Right. So we memorialized everything we'd spoken about, the major code requirements, the access and water, in a formal letter that was given to them in early June with specific timelines to meet those requirements, giving them the opportunity to work with architects to design those plans, to show good faith that they are trying to comply with the fire codes.
Had you ever done anything like this before, pertaining to pallet yards?
No, not on this level.
Okay, I'm wondering why a couple of years ago, after the really major one, why nothing of that sort was undertaken.
I can't speak to that.
Did you want to speak to when you do have a pallet fire, what that does to resources throughout the city?
Yeah, so anytime that we have a pallet fire, because these fires tend to grow so rapidly, they quickly deplete our firefighting resources. So the last couple of fires that we've had have taken all the fire apparatus and equipment here within the city of Stockton and have impacted our mutual aid partners across the county that also come to the fires or actually come to backfill our firehouses here in the city to continue to provide that 911 service to the community, because just while these fires are occurring, there's other emergencies that are also occurring simultaneously that require a response from the fire department. So trying to address this to make sure these properties are code compliant, reduce that impact or the risk of fires, help to mitigate that, and make sure that we have resources available to respond to the community's needs.
Do you have any other questions or?
Can you repeat everything in Spanish?
Not today.
Let's
Come
see.
back in a year, maybe.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll give them cue cards then, right?
And anybody speak Spanish in the back?
But you need to say lo siento.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that's it. Well, Linda, we'll talk with you. Don't worry.
Need it all over again?
Yeah. Once again, one more time. Yeah. Okay, so thank you for coming. If you don't have a copy of the media advisory, I can share that with you. So it's a little easier on you.